I used to think that pushing through pain meant that I was disciplined. I didn't even have chronic pain yet. I just thought that suffering meant that I was strong. And my body was slowly starting to beg for breaks that it never used to ask for. But I was still able to do things. So I did without question. I figured that if I gave in, that meant that I was weak. And what I didn't know then was that if I had listened to my body, I'd actually have become stronger. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about learning how to live well on your own terms. Welcome to the Unusual Yogi Podcast, a space for living, moving, and resting beyond the wellness norm. I'm Meaghan, and here we have honest conversations about chronic pain, movement, rest, and what it means to live life differently in a body that doesn't know how to follow the rules. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm sure that you've noticed that we are in a different area of my house. If you've ever watched any of my Instagram videos or anything like that, you'll know that this is my couch. We're here because I am having a bad flare day. And I'm sure for those of you who are watching without the video, you have no care at all about this. But I wanted to let you know because I feel vulnerable right now. I'm tired. I'm not feeling great. My heat pad is on its max setting. I am on all my pain meds. So we're going to do our best today. And I'm going to be chilling right here. Let's get into the episode, shall we? So let's go back in time. I was about 11 and the year was 2007. I got my first ever cramps. And I remember being keeled over while listening to my summer camp instructor telling me, honestly, I have no idea what they were telling me. All I know is that I was in a chair in a ball wanting to cry. It sucked. And my cramps really only continued from there. Years went by. I took hormonal birth control, which honestly must have helped at some point because it wasn't until I stopped taking them in about 2018, 2019. And then everything started changing. I really noticed a shift in my pain. It started to creep up again. And it was always happening around my cycle. I could tell when I was ovulating, and everything slowly started to feel worse. I was tired. I had headaches that turned into migraines. And every time I would see a doctor, I was always told that it was just anxiety, which I'm sure sounds so familiar to all of you. So we're going to go a little bit forward to the year 2021 when I had the most horrific bout of cramps I've ever had. It lasted over a month. I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want to move. I straight up did not want to do anything at all. All I wanted was for everything to stop hurting. So I gave in and I was like, no way is this just anxiety. I'm going to make a doctor's appointment. I'm going to see a doctor and hopefully they'll be able to tell me something, right? So I'm really glad that I did that because it ended up being the thing that put me through a medical trajectory that I would have never expected at the time. My doctor actually knew what endometriosis was. I didn't. And he suspected I had it. So he sent me for an ultrasound. And after receiving the ultrasound report, I got a call from somebody telling me that I had stage 2 endometriosis. Now, if you don't know, I don't think that they could actually tell what stage it is through an ultrasound. So uh, at the time, I didn't know what endometriosis was, and I was left in the dark after that. So I had to do my own research to then find out that little piece of I don't know if this is actually true. And I was left to navigate the whole system alone, find out what it meant to have endometriosis and how I was going to navigate like my whole life at this point, right? So I started looking into medical journals and blog spaces. I got to see all the positive and negative sides of social media and the information that it has to give you about this diagnosis. And I'll be real, there's a lot. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot of things that medically will tell you is not true. There's a lot of confusion. And you know what? It's 2026, and I'm still waiting for the surgery to officially confirm what was told to me in 2021, sorry. It's 5 years ago. And during this time, I tried changing my diets. I tried staying away from food and alcohol and limiting caffeine. I used to drink like 8 cups of coffee a day. Um, and I tried to learn how to move in a way without being in so much pain that I would leave crying and unable to walk from a yin class. A yin class. Like, can you can you let that sink in for a second? I went to probably one of the most gentle things that you could do for your body, and I left crying and unable to walk. Like, I hid in the bathroom waiting for somebody to come get me because I was in that much pain. And I'm sure you're wondering, how did you go from that crying after yin class to becoming a group fitness instructor? Because if you didn't know, not only do I teach yoga, but I also teach Pilates and bar. It was very much just learning how to honor myself where I was that day, even if it looked different from yesterday. As an example, right now, today looks very different than yesterday. I'm tired. And now I could say all that, but I know that I could be very hard-headed, and at the time I was very determined not to let the pain take over my life so badly that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I was very determined to reach my goals when it came to yoga, Pilates, bar, etc. And I was determined to make this life work, right? So I started teaching yoga, which again led me to teaching everything else. And while it led me to make great choices about my life, obviously, it also led me to make quite a few bad choices. A lot of the time I would not, especially like the first year and a half, I would not call out a class if I was having a flare. I would go ahead and teach it anyway. And I would demo as much as the class that I could and compartmentalize and try and force the part of my brain that would yell at me to stop out. Just so that I could do what I wanted to do. It's a very bad habit that I have that I know where I got that habit from. And I thought it was fine. I thought that this was just how I had to live my life. And sure, at first it was like easy, right? I only taught 4 classes. And then 4 classes turned into 6 classes. And then 6 classes turned into 8 classes. And suddenly those 8 classes sometimes turned into me teaching 12 to 14 classes a week. Keep in mind, up until this point, I was still demoing. I was still making jokes about letting the teacher gods take over so that I could compartmentalize and teach a class, even though I was in such severe pain that at one point I burst a cyst during class, finished the class, and went to the hospital because I was in so much pain that as soon as everyone left, I collapse to the floor and just start crying. It was bad. It was bad. It was not a highlight in my life. Um, and I was sure for a really long time that this was just going to be how it is. That is until recently. As recently, you might ask, as I believe it was August, June. No, not June. It had to be July or August of 2025. So just a few months ago. And I had an endoscopy, which determined that I have celiac disease, which, by the way, at the time, not a clue, not a single clue in my whole life that I would have this disease. And that's when I learned that endometriosis and celiac are actually comorbid diseases. That means that they like to be together, and that the inflammation from one will often highly affect the other, which isn't great. So that's also when I started thinking about, if I'm going to be teaching this much, i.e., 8 to 14 classes a week, I need to demo a lot less, like a lot less. And so I stopped teaching so much with my body and more verbally, which was great. And of course, at the same time, started to eat a gluten-free diet because I had to. And those two things really built a very strong foundation for what I'm honestly still navigating and learning from, and really wish I did and learned sooner, because it was just a couple months ago in December that I really noticed that my daily pain had gone away. So even though I've been teaching just as much, I was eating gluten-free and I was demoing less. And I slowly started to do my own personal yoga and workouts as much as it felt right for me on my own time. Uh, Essentially, I stopped trying to do more. I started to focus on doing what felt good for me in the moment. And suddenly my pain was a lot less. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying, okay, so you started really doing it a few months ago, and then in December, everything started feeling good. And then you posted this podcast a month ago. Yes, I've been thinking about this podcast since even before my official celiac diagnosis. And I always wanted it to be something like this because I think so many people like me who deal with chronic pain have really bad habits of taking in what everybody has to say in this world about pushing yourself. And I don't think that we're given the opportunity to actually find what works for us and become consistent and stable in what is actually good for us and what will take us through our journey, making us stronger, less in pain, and more consistent. So I'd like to really reframe what punishment in movement sounds like versus what partnership in movement sounds like. Punishment might sound like, I should do more and everyone else can, no excuses, like all those like fun little things that you see on gym walls, and what a lot of people on the internet like to say all the time, telling you to push more, do more, be more, essentially hustle culture in fitness. And quite frankly, that was a lot of what I was telling myself, especially at the beginning of this journey. And I truly thought that if I honored my levels of energy and I was true to my own body, that I'd be doing less and not performing as much as everyone else. And therefore, that made me lazy. That's not true. Just letting you know now, that's not true. Since August, I've realized that if you do partnership in movement, which sounds a lot like, what do I actually have today? Or something like, what would support me today, or even just as simple as something like asking yourself, is this helping me build trust with myself, or is this breaking trust with myself? It changed everything for me when I started using this as my filter, honestly, because it as soon as I started asking myself these kind of questions instead of following that fitness hustle culture of do more, be more, scream more, I don't know. Everything changed. Do I still have cramps? Yes. My little cramp buddy, I don't think you can see it. It's at 5. Okay. We're having a day. Do I actually say no to taking on more when I do have cramps? Also, yes. I'm still working on that. I could be a bit of a people pleaser, I won't lie. But, I've also started working out not to create classes, but to move for myself, which was an amazing shift for me because I only ever used to work out for others, right? I started moving in ways that are actually helpful for me. And I started doing things that were more about where I'm at this week rather than anything else, right? I learned that my body was never broken. I learned that I just stopped trusting how to understand and listen to my own internal cues. And instead that decided what everyone else's enough would also be my own. No, no. When I talk to students, I always talk about how much I love modifications, how much I love props, because that way you could adapt to your own body and its needs. And when I stopped just saying that to my students and modeled that behavior and stopped forcing myself, that changed everything for both myself and my students, right? I look back on everything that I've learned in my studies about DOMs, and I realized that I was giving myself gold medals for exercise that caused me pain. I turned something healthy into something that was hurting me instead of helping me. So I shifted. I had to shift, and I think it was important to shift into prioritizing rest, real rest, not productive rest like what this is, like writing out a podcast episode or filming said podcast episode or scheduling content or imagining and writing out a routine. No, I didn't even prioritize guilty rest, which I know we are all guilty of, which is like getting caught doom scrolling or doing something that I'm laying there resting and I feel guilty about it, right? No, I started prioritize real rest. I started prioritizing watching my favorite show with a face mask on. I started prioritizing rest that looked like taking a bubble bath with Epsom salts and listening to a podcast. And you know what happened? I bet you could guess. It actually made me stronger. It made me capable of doing more again. I have more energy these days. Look at me. I'm in I'm in pain. And I'm excitedly speaking to you about this because I'm I know where I'm at and I could honor that, and I'm not going to get stuck in loops where I'm doing too much and then I'm crashing. I'm not. And when I started learning more about pain science, something incredible clicked for me. Okay. Chronic pain isn't just about injured tissue. It's often a lot about a sensitized nervous system that has learned to stay on high alert. And when your system is constantly bracing or constantly pushing or constantly trying to override signals, it becomes a lot more reactive. So what does that mean? That means that every time I forced myself through a flare, I was not building resilience, which I thought I was at the time. I was actually reinforcing a threat response. A threat response. So, what did we learn? We learned that slowing down didn't make me weaker. It helped my nervous system feel safer. And now I always just do enough. So, I've been talking about how I practice for myself. So, doing yoga, bar, Pilates, all for myself. Not counting the limited demoing that still needs to be done for my visual learners in my class. So, I do that either at home or at one of the studios that I work at, and I do this anywhere between like 1 and 3 times a week for myself. And I'm sure some of you who love to push yourselves are thinking, that's not enough. Um, and I want to break that down because when I'm saying that I practice my movement 1 to 3 times a week now, and some of you are thinking that's not enough, I start questioning for who? If that's my enough, that's better than doing nothing, isn't it? It's better than overtraining. It's better than hurting myself, isn't it? So if you're living with chronic pain or chronic fatigue or an illness or anything else that honestly messes you up and makes your energy unpredictable, shouldn't that be enough for you too? Shouldn't enough be defined by sustainability? Shouldn't it be defined by consistency? One of the things we see in chronic pain physiology is something that could be called the boom bust cycle. You have a good day, so you do everything. I'm guilty of this. I'm so guilty of this. And what happens is you end up overdoing this and then you crash. And that cycle doesn't build strength. It builds instability. We need to understand that building sustainable, moderate, consistent movement in our daily lives actually helps regulate that pattern over time. So, shouldn't we think that enough could be something you could do week in and week out? Or at the very least, maybe have it a little tailored to where you're at that day? I think so. I think that if you're on your couch and you could do a couple clamshells, you're doing perfectly. Because quite frankly, sometimes my one practice a week is a yin class. And why? Because it made me feel better. I don't cry during my yin classes anymore. I don't most of the time. Sometimes I do. They could be very healing. They're nice. Try it if you haven't. But it it helps me tap into my body again, right? It helps me slow down. It helps me breathe. It helps me tolerate sensation differently. And whether it's fascia or nervous system regulation or just giving myself that permission to pause, it really helps. So, shouldn't that also be enough maybe for you too? Shouldn't enough be defined by you? It shouldn't it make you feel good again? So, like, whatever it is, if it's a yin class, great. Or if it's just doing a little exercise from your couch, amazing. What enough should be is what doesn't flare you, right? It should be the thing that is slowly building your strength and doing enough to dissipate your pain so that you could maybe even learn to do more over time, right? If I know that I say this so much, but like if you learn in how to tune into your own body and listen to your cues and your signals, I could pretty much promise that you're going to start seeing slow results. And sure, yeah, it's slow, but it's results, and it's better than nothing. Like, it's not gonna be super flashy, but one day you're gonna wake up and realize that you've been in a lot less pain than you used to, and that you're ready to do things that maybe you've been afraid of. I think about where I'm at now and how I've been honoring myself and eating better for my body, and suddenly I wanna start lifting weights again. And isn't that amazing that I've built that trust that I'm not scared of that anymore? And I give myself credit for that. You should give yourself credit if you're doing something as long as it feels good, right? Like, that's the whole point. The more that you give yourself the credit of like, oh, I did this little thing, the more you're slowly going to be able to give yourself. And I know that chronic pain can feel like the thing that will hold you back from everything that you want to do in your life. I get it. And I understand that chronic pain also a lot of the time makes you not want to do anything at all. I get that too. But what if that's only because we're still thinking about doing things in a way that people who are different from us do them? What if instead we really started to look at sustainable movement as the ticket to becoming our strongest, healthiest version of ourselves again? Think about it. Why are you going to compare yourself to somebody who is not living the life that you are? You deserve to compare yourself to somebody who actually understands you, right? You can't look at this able-bodied person and think, well, if they could do everything, then I should be able to do everything they can. No, this is their regular Monday and this is your ultimate high. let's let's find something. Let's meet somewhere in the middle where we actually trust ourselves enough to listen to ourselves, and we actually find the energy to become consistent in a way that's sustainable. Again, I have said this so many times in this episode, but if your Monday looks like doing a Pilates sculpt class and you feel amazing and that's great, and then Wednesday rolls around and you're like, if I do a Pilates sculpt class today, I might die, then don't do that, dude. Don't. Like, if you want to move, which I suggest that you at least try something small. Try doing a few stretches in bed. Try doing maybe a workout again from your couch or from a chair. Like, if you do that, you might find momentum. If you're feeling really good, you might find momentum and you might be able to do more. Amazing. If you try it and that's enough, at least you did something. And that should be good. That's how you build that bridge from thinking of exercise and movement as some kind of punishment, as something that's going to flare you, and instead looking at it as, oh, this can be sustainable. This can work for me almost daily, and it can make me feel really good, and it can be really healthy for me. And who knows, maybe it'll even make you feel healthier again and less in pain, which I think that's what we all want. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you enjoyed the episode and you want to support the Unusual Yogi podcast, the biggest help that you can give is leaving a review or sharing this episode with a friend or somebody that you think might really benefit from listening to this. If you'd like, you could also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. I am posting across all of those platforms now. It is all the Unusual Yogi podcast. And now, if this episode resonated with you and you want to support the podcast in a tangible way, of course, I've added a small support link in the show notes below. Until next time, I hope that you really take care of yourself and your body in ways that actually work, because you deserve it.